The title of the panel is Envisioning a Sustainable Tomorrow, Strategies for Long-Term Climate Resilience. Our moderator for this session is Ed Morgan, who's the Director of Policy and for the Policy Innovation Hub at Griffith University in Australia. We have also a fantastic panel with Pallavi Verma Patil, who's an environment education lead at the Ashoka Trust for Research in Ecology and the Environment. Welcome. And we have Dominic Ong, who we have seen you on previous panels as well, Associate Professor and Deputy Dean for Research at Griffith University, Australia. We have Espen Ronneberg, Senior Advisor for Climate Change and Multilateral Agreements at the Pacific Community. And we have Elaiza Naka, who's a Country Engagement Specialist, National Determined Contributions Partnership Support Unit. Have a great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming back from your tea break. This is the last plenary panel. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the organisers for such a fantastic conference and the volunteers for all of their hard work. I'm very much looking forward and very honoured to be moderating such a great panel. This is all about thinking about the future and trying to think strategically about the future. And we're going to touch on quite a few different things like the other panels. There's quite a cross-section of different areas. And that's going to include education, which we know is absolutely vital for the future. Innovation, whether that's reinventing old things or actually discovering new things, which we also know is absolutely crucial. And also with a focus on the environment and protecting the environment and the Sustainable Development Goals of 14 and 15. And of course, climate action, because if we don't do something about both biodiversity and climate crises, we don't have much of a future, or we certainly don't have a future that we might like. So I won't spend a lot of time because I think it's far more interesting to hear from our panel. And we'll start with Pallavi, who will be talking about local education.
Thank you, Ed. And I want to thank the organizers, and I want to thank you all who are sitting listening to us. When I saw the abstract of the panel, I was really excited because it had two things that I really enjoy. One is envisioning a future, and that's the domain I work in, a future which is livable and flourishing for all, not for few. And the other thing that I really liked in the articulation was the idea of formal and informal quality education. And it's the blend of both the space in which I work. I'm going to stand up because I'm very animated when I talk about my own work, and I really like my work, and I have slides to show. So please, indulge me. Well, okay. I'm going to just give some examples from India. I belong to the south of India, and there is some work that I'm directly involved with. There is some work that I'm indirectly involved with, and there is some work that I like a lot, and I like to amplify it in different forums. This is the name of our panel. And yeah, and this is the regenerative future that one of my students, I was a university faculty until last year, and one of my students drew this for me. And please see the women, the ecofeminism in this art. I want to start with a quote. Those in the education sector will know the educationist who's written the quote. Does anybody know the quote in this room? Just raise your hand. I'll show you the whole quote. No? We will know what type of education to provide if we know what kind of society we want. There's a very famous educationist called John Dewey, and he was writing about this. if we have an idea of a good society, and Francesco in the morning said the good society should be measured just not by GNP, in the future he hopes it should be measured by all other indicators. If we have an idea of a good society, which has sustainability, which has happiness, which has gender equality, which has all sorts of freedom, all sorts of liberty, freedom, liberty, democracy, these ideas, then we have to work today for an education that allows us to reach this good society. Here are some examples that I have covered over a decade, and I'm just going to show you some pictures. This is a work I did in Bangalore. This is millets. The children, and it's an elite urban school, the children grew food and they grew millets in the space of food sovereignty. And they went from growing, sowing, transplanting, learning soil management, learning the ecology and the web of life, to actually harvesting it on their school terrace. This entire thing was based on activity-based education, but they learned their English, their maths, their language, their social science, issues of agriculture, and the soil fertility, all while doing this 2-year project. This is a very cute group of researchers, 8-year-olds, who are going around their village because their maths teacher asked them, you have to do data handling, and the data you have to find out is how many houses have thatched roof and how many houses have paka roofs, the solid roofs. And they just went around the village and they did tally mark, and they came back and they did some equations around it. This is 8 years old. And today in the morning, they were saying data, data, data. Yes, you don't need to reach university to understand that data is important, and data is important for your own welfare, for your own good society in your village. You can start teaching these skills from 8-year on, as soon as they learn how to read, write, and do basic maths. This is a water testing of nearby water bodies in Assam, India in 2014. They had a chemistry lab. They were anyways doing some tests in the chemistry lab. All they had to do was go around in the ponds and the lakes and streams and pick up water samples. And the girls here, these are high school girls, and they were just testing and seeing which water is contaminated, which it isn't. This data needs to be given at the local government level. We talked of decentralization, we talked of local governance, localization, hyper-local. These are themes that are coming in this conference. And therefore, I feel like these skills and this activism needs to come at the school education level today, and at a very urgent level. A lot of my work at the organization I work with is to look at what is the kind of natural resource ecosystem management that children can do in schools. It's very easy to start a seed bank in school. It doesn't take too much. You can just start it. It's very easy to start composting in school, waste management, pest management, water harvesting, watershed management. A lot of permaculture can be taught in schools. And I have been part of projects like this. This is just one picture of the several projects that I know. And so I want to finish by saying that in school education, you have to today design, and that is a work that all of us have to do who are in the space of education. You have to design a curriculum which is for just sustainable futures, which has knowledge, skills, and attitudes for meeting our basic needs, which is clean air, clean water, healthy food, developing an ecological consciousness. How do we lower our own carbon footprint? Caring and managing our natural resources. I spoke on the first day of a very lovely slogan, which is a legacy of the indigenous struggles in India called Jal, Jangal, Jameen. It's not Z, it's Jameen. It's a typo there. These are 3 J's that we would like everyone to be a custodian of, starting from school level. Working on the land, caring for the earth, saving native steeds, preparing natural medicines, and combining the knowledge of natural science. Please don't throw social science out. There is always a science mafia in schools. We're seeing an economics mafia here, as I said yesterday. But there is also a science mafia in schools. And you have to bring in issues of equity, justice, along with sustainability. I wanted to just end by saying that I have a project called Jal Jangal Jameen in Classrooms, which is run by my organization, A-Tree, and I use digital technology to source all the exciting books that are being produced in India, which are contextual, relevant, and to have an understanding of how they should be caring about their own natural resources. I have an Instagram account as well. Please join it. In fact, went around looking at shops and the book center here at USP to see if there are environment education books. And to my delight, I found some. I will even put those pictures up there. So here is the Instagram account. That's a lovely, lovely image done by an artist friend. And you can see the Jal Jangal Jameen there. I want to end by a Pete Seeger song. It says the world will be solved by millions of small things. So it's not just one thing that is going to solve. All of us have to pitch in different directions and add to the go. I'm very inspired by Gandhi. I have a book which is open access, Gandhi for Children. And I want to say that I started engaging with Gandhi a decade ago. And I want to, on his behalf, say thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Pallavi, and thank you for that reminder that education doesn't have to be books in a classroom, and that how we inspire our children will absolutely define our future. I will move on to Dominic and ask him to present his work. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ed. All right. Good morning, everyone. First and foremost, I would like to thank GDN and all its sponsors for having me here to share my experience as a geoenvironmental engineer. Geoenvironmental engineering is actually a specialized discipline of civil engineering. So nowadays, being a climate change adaptation engineer, we like to appreciate a problem, take a cue from nature, find a suitable method and derive possible solution or a combination of solutions suitable for that specific location. And there is no one size fits all kind of a solution. My scope is framed within the civil and environmental engineering discipline and the construction industry. All right, and to get a conversation going, these are perhaps the top 10 disruptive technologies in the construction industry. I'm just going to name a few. You've got prefabrication, modular construction, you got augmented reality, AR, VR, you have 3D scanning, photogrammetry, big data analytics, and so on and so forth. Now, to set the context, I'm going to touch on the broad topic of coastline challenges, storm surge, sea level rise, major causes for extreme flooding. And there was a journal paper out there, and they tried to model a 1 in 100 year return period surge, plus westerly wind direction. That's probably the most severe inundation due to topographic and bathymetric characteristics of the Fiji's largest island. So as you can see, it's quite a fair bit to do with also the topographical and the surrounding of any particular country. So by no means it's going to be a unique solution to this kind of a problem. So coastal erosion is another major concern. Accretion actually is measured at about 2 to 7 centimeters per year. And here, I'm going to talk about resilient infrastructure, focusing on sustainable binder for road construction. Now, taking the cue from the Egyptian pyramids that existed about 6,000 years ago, at that time, cement was, of course, non-existent. The Egyptians used burnt limestone to produce lime, which acts as a pozzolan or a reactive material that reacts with water to produce mortar or binder, in what we call in general. And taking a cue from this, sustainable binders are created. One such green cement is created through biostimulation of naturally occurring bacteria to produce calcium carbonate, which is green cement under optimum conditions. So I'm originally from the state of Sarawak in Malaysia. If you do know of the island Borneo, so I'm actually from Kuching. There are 3 countries on Borneo. I have been fascinated by the calcium carbonate stalactites and stalagmites hanging from the ceilings and floors of limestone cave. And that was my motivation. The bacteria S. pasteuri was eventually isolated from samples collected from the cave by my interdisciplinary research team, and eventually led me to lead the group to the creation of green binder akin to cement through nature-based microbial-induced induced carbonate precipitation, or the MICP process. The MICP process can be used to solidify loose beach sand into strong sandstones. It's less than 2 weeks, as opposed to a natural geological timescale of hundreds of years. Although through the secretion of bacteria enzymes stimulated by food waste with presence of supplied calcium ions. Thus, MICP can be used to prevent beach erosion, liquefaction during seismic shaking, improve road foundation in the design of resilient infrastructure, which is particularly important in the Pacific Island nations. This can be applied underground through push-pull or the what we call the pump suction injection method, as shown in the upper top right figure there, that we experimentally did that, and we could actually solidify loose sand into sandstone. And we could actually do it in a pretty large scale at 10 meter cube as a large prototype. And an alternative to the cave bacteria, my next endeavor is to use coral reef bacteria. Since coral skeletons are also calcium carbonate products, similar to the cave stalactites and stalagmites. So by understanding the chemical reactions taking place, sustainable binders can also be developed using biopolymers, such as chitosan from waste crustacean shells or guar gum from plant extract. Similarly, mining byproducts such as fly ash, red mud, and slag, all of these byproducts have the same chemical compositions as cement, but just requires chemical activators to be reactive like cement. This way, carbon dioxide is not released to the environment, and these byproducts are then successfully diverted from landfills. With strong foundation, roads built on improved ground can withstand floods and seismic shaking, thus ensuring road connectivity for continuous movements of goods and services during crisis periods. Okay, my second topic I'm going to talk about is inland and hillside challenges. I think Fiji experienced the first ever Cat 1 cyclone Winston that unpacked close to 300 kilometers per hour of wind, flattening buildings, and it also caused floods, landslides, and it's actually made worse by unfavorable geomorphological and geological factors. Now, drawing the motivation from the design of a traditional Fijian bure, that photo, the top upper left there, was taken in USP in one of the locations just down the road there. A house built with a hip roof or a roof with 4 sloping sides can withstand wind gusts, typically from small cyclones, better than a house with 2 sloping sides only, due to the smoother aerodynamic wind flow in all directions and greater number of anchoring points that you actually have connecting the roof to the raised ground, built using heavy rocks that prevent easy wind uplift. As you can see right there, the bure right there, it has all the elements of a resilient infrastructure in terms of the design, but of course in terms of the construction material. As you can see there, the bottom right-hand corner is the structure that you actually walk past through. I'm not sure how many of you actually observe that structure when you head towards tea or lunch. So this structure is obviously made of steel, and on the top photo there, you could see this metal roof. Of course, this kind of material is better than timber. So if you notice also, the bure has small doors and windows to prevent wind suction effects. Okay, in the building that could potentially detach the roof. For this reason, it is important that windows and doors of houses must be able to be tightly closed during strong wind to actually prevent roof uplift. Wastewater and environmental challenges. A very good project there is the Suva Nosori Water Supply and Sewerage project completed in 2016, financed by ADB. But nationally, there's 75% of households that are not connected to any wastewater network. So I'm going to talk something on that. This is the area that I hold dearly to. Individual septic tanks, if we look at it on the top left-hand corner, tend to leak over time due to poor maintenance or neglect. Polluting raw sewage enters the ground and then finds its way through the groundwater system, contaminating groundwater, seawater, causing harm to fish and coral reefs. Typically, when replacing septic tank or when replacing faulty sewage point system, piping system, open trenching method is often practiced, but open trenching method can be disruptive to traffic in the city center, be dusty, and produce excavation spoil which needs to be disposed using dump trucks. All these activities are not environmental friendly. However, the traditional open trenching method cannot be replaced using trenchless technology, such as performing pipe bursting method by pulling a flexible pipeline fastened with a mechanical bursting head from the entry pit to the exit pit. In the process, a new PVC pipeline is actually laid while the old clay or cement pipes are actually burst and left in situ. This pipe bursting method has a limited installation depth of up to 3.5 meters only. So anything deeper, pipe jacking via the micro tunneling method can be implemented. There's countries in Singapore, Malaysia, Australia that adopt this because they want to actually provide sewage to big cities and to have a gravity flow system. So as the sewer lines are actually built deep underground, typically below roads to prevent being accidentally excavated and flow under gravity, there are low maintenance and thus do not require transitional pumping stations because that would require energy to push the sewage from houses to treatment plants. Then clean effluents will then be released through sea outfalls after being treated at the wastewater treatment plants. Therefore, households must be actually encouraged to actually connect to the main sewer line for proper sewage transfer to keep the environmental healthy. So a bit of other technologies as well. And I think we all have to acknowledge the fact that digitalization is here to stay and it wouldn't run away. Such as the use of drone LiDAR to generate point cloud data. Data is worth X amount of money, is so valuable, and how we're going to manage that once you've got large data coming into the picture. How we're going to integrate that into GIS systems that could be useful to develop landslide vulnerability maps, hazard modeling, agricultural crop mapping to increase food production. So it's a lot of this kind of really useful application. Large-scale digital mapping can also be used to create digital twins. And digital twins means you take a very deep scan, a very intense scan, and collect all this point cloud data that you could actually use it eventually for training purpose, hazard training. You could do modeling, create a scenario. The cyclone is coming in this direction at this speed. Which are the areas that are going to be affected, and how are we going to create a training program to actually help first responders to actually respond to natural hazards like that. Similarly, the powers of AI, machine learning algorithms cannot be discounted as they are needed to perform big data analytics for optimization, forward prediction of possible emergency outcomes to help in decision-making during crisis. Last slide, bear with me, Ed. This is the latest information that we have actually got out of the survey that we did. One of these questions that we actually posed to 150 Asia Pacific engineers. We asked them, are you involved in the use of any of the following technologies in your work or research? And you can see that there's overwhelmingly response of 40% that says they do not know any of this. And being engineer, and we also have our continuous professional development points that we have to collect as we move through our profession. And the more senior you get, you have to achieve these points. And that is where we think that future education definitely is a way to go. And for this, our team has started outreach program involving year 6 students learning engineering software through gamification, because a lot of kids, they love how to, to game online, and then we use engineering software to actually help them stimulate their interests and then get them to be very much involved. And one such program is actually the Minecraft to Reality program that it has already been ongoing for the last 4 years. And recently we've got the support of Queensland government to roll it out to about 35 schools across the whole state of Queensland. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic. And just, yes, fascinating to see from small children collecting data on a house or their houses through to massive digitalization and digital twins. But I think there is a through line here in terms of innovation and learning from, traditional methods as well. Thank you. I'd like to invite Espen to talk to us now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me to come to the session. Climate change is the greatest challenge and threat to sustainable development and to basically the livability of the Pacific. Pacific Island leaders have declared this for many, many years now, but we all know this. And when I first started out working on climate change back in 1992, they used to say that there were two sides to the coin of climate change. One was mitigation and the other one was adaptation. We suspected, but we gradually learned that that wasn't true, because we know we also have to consider loss and damage from unavoidable climate change. But to look at this challenge, so my colleague from the NDC will talk a little bit about the efforts that the region are doing on mitigation. But certainly the Pacific Island leaders have wanted to show that everybody can do their part. So we have very highly ambitious renewable energy targets, for example, in the region. And it's for several purposes. One, to tell the international community that we're doing our part. But secondly, it does have an important economic angle to it as well, given the massive amount of money that we pay each year for fossil fuels being imported into the region. But I won't dwell so much on the mitigation side of the climate change challenge, because even if the Pacific went 100% renewable, that we didn't have any CO2 emissions from industry or transportation or whatever it is, it wouldn't make any difference in the big picture, because we only contribute around 0.03%. So while it is an important political but also economic issue for us to tackle, I wanted to look a little bit more closely at adaptation and loss and damage. So we've heard from several previous speakers about what some of these challenges are. For the three key areas of concern in the region are basically food security, water management and water security, and coastal zone protection, because most of our populations live in the coastal zones. All of our countries are dependent on rainwater for freshwater supply, and food security is limited because of not a lot of landmass, not a lot of arable land, and so forth. So we have a number of already challenged sectors that are now being impacted by climate change. I used to work for the government of the Marshall Islands, and they have what I would consider to be a sort of a trifecta of absolute potential horrors on the horizon because of climate change. First of all, completely dependent on rainwater catchment for freshwater supply and for the limited amount of agriculture that they do. Secondly, the rainwater, when it comes, if it isn't stored in rainwater tanks, it goes into freshwater lenses. That freshwater lens sits on top of salt brackish water. With sea level rise, there will be increased pressure on that freshwater lens, pushing it upwards and shrinking it. So you have sea level rise and you have changing rainfall patterns, creating a problem. Then you have intensifying storms. Now in Marshall Islands, they very seldom get cyclones, but they do get storm surges and king tides. And when that happens, you get wave overtopping, which can go into the freshwater lens, but it also damages the roots of crops, or if the waves are very high, it also damages leaves. So a massive problem being faced. Now, we've also heard from some of the previous speakers about the challenges of trying to get financing. I just returned from Baku from COP29, and we were fighting a very hard battle when it comes to climate change financing. Because for the Pacific, it's not so much, we weren't so much focused on the quantum. You would have seen headlines about trillions of dollars being asked for. Well, we weren't so much focusing on that. We were focusing more on the quality of the financing. We were looking at this from a more granular perspective. Not just the money, it's about how the money, excuse me, how the money gets spent, what it supports. We need to have a much more granular look at what the means of implementation, what the financing should go towards. For example, when it comes to capacity building, doing capacity building and training in the Pacific is vastly different from a larger developing country because of our small populations, because of the small administrations, and a variety of different reasons. But it has to be targeted at what we have available in the country in terms of personnel, human resources. The same thing goes for technologies. Vast improvements in renewable energy technology are happening all over the world, but a lot of that is for larger scale applications, not necessarily to fit the size and the needs of small island states in the Pacific. And that we were trying to grapple with. For example, suggesting that instead of doing these very large scale applications, we should focus more on smaller scale applications, because it's easier to upscale something than it is to cram something down on a small island. And then when we get to the financing part, we have to be a lot more targeted in how the financing comes in. The project cycles that we've been going through is not working for us. A 4 to 5 year project that just ends is simply not a sustainable way of doing climate change action in the region. You can't simply assume that at the end of the 5 year project that first of all, the national government will have the resources to carry on operating that project. You can't assume that they will have the personnel to do the maintenance and the upkeep of that project. You can't assume that the personnel will be retained. If they were given a fairly decent salary by the project, can the government sustain that? Can the government continue to fund the operations of the project? So we were looking at some solutions that have actually been around for a very long time. The previous panel spoke about, the colleague from the Caribbean spoke about the first SIDS conference in Barbados. I actually was part of writing the program of action, although I didn't get to go to Barbados because of we had some politicians who wanted to go. So the solutions that were suggested back then are still valid today, and we were trying our hardest in Baku to try and get some traction on this. One of the things that we were calling for was, don't ask us to write a massive PhD about why this project is going to be important. Why can't you simply utilize the existing sector plans and action plans that we already have in place? Why can't we use existing planning and existing strategies, some of them even down to the local and community levels, that are already in place? The second point was about the longevity of projects or the funding cycles. We wanted to go beyond 10 years at least, but we would be willing to settle for 10 years. We didn't get that, of course, but we tried. But also to consider funding beyond the project cycles, even if it's a 5-year project, we have to consider what happens afterwards. And there has to be a sustainability strategy for that. And in many cases, countries will already know what they need to do, and they know what it's going to cost, but the resources are simply not available to do that. And that was another thing that we were trying to change, but we haven't been able to do. And finally, we also need to empower much more local, national level implementation. And that means a situation, well, let me just give you the example of a situation. So one major development bank, when doing projects in the region, will pay international salary for an international consultant to come to country X. A citizen of country X with the same skill sets and the same knowledge, actually probably better knowledge because of local knowledge as well, would be eligible for about 10% of the international consultancy fee. That is something that just doesn't make sense, because that person from country X could go to country Y and receive the international fee. It makes no sense whatsoever. But that is some of the sort of structural impediments that are there in the international financing system. We've been trying our hardest to overcome this, but we simply haven't been able to. And just to segue into my colleague's remarks about coming from the NDC hub, another structural impediment that we have is the way in which funding agencies look at success of a project. So you take a renewable energy project, and they will look at something like tons of CO2 reduced per dollar, rather than the percentage of the population that now has access to modern renewable energy. They will look at an adaptation project and look at the number of people who are being made more resilient, rather than the proportion of the population that are being made more resilient. So the system isn't working for us. We're trying to change it. But like I said, I've been doing this for 33 years now, and it's still an uphill battle, and we will still struggle on. Thank you.
Thank you, Espen, and thank you for your efforts in that struggle. And it really does come back to, if we're thinking about a just and sustainable society, that Pallavi mentioned, these are issues of justice and fairness, and we need to bear that in mind, and the structures just aren't there yet. But thank you, and Eliza, I'd like to invite you to give your presentation.
Thank you. I'll just take it off from where Espen left it off in terms of financing projects and programs when it comes to climate change. Whether it's a mitigation or whether it's an adaptation project, like one thing that we know for sure when we are in the climate change space, that there is just simply not enough resources pledged or committed for countries to implement their adaptation and mitigation projects. So that's where we come in. I currently work for the Nationally Determined Contribution Partnership. I'll just give you a bit of context about like the NDC partnership. So the NDC partnership simply came about in 2015 to support the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goal for 2030. It was noted that most of the countries are finding it hard to access climate finance that is provided, and in terms of implementing projects that has to address adaptation and mitigation, thus the National Determined Contribution Partnership. So with the Nationally Determined Contribution Partnership, we are guided by 10 core principles, ranging from supporting countries-driven processes, which is country drive their own request when it comes to adaptation and mitigation projects, enhancing efficiency and responsiveness, building in-country capacity, whether it's knowledge management or capacity building in terms of the climate change space. This is something like that the partnership tries to get in our partners to support it. And then like it ranges on to promoting gender inequality. So any project that comes through the partnership that is requested by the countries, it goes through these 10 core principles. So when you think of like the NDCs, these are countries' contributions. This is something that is put forward by the country. So since 2015, most countries have been like coming in like with their NDCs. So from 2015, after every 5 years, most have gone on to their update, to update like their NDCs. And to date, most countries are updating their third version. And one thing that I want to make clear is that in the period of those 5 years, like those adaptation and mitigation, like nationally determined contribution, it gets ambitious. It must be ambitious so that we can meet the targets that we are trying to achieve by 2030. So how do we actually mobilize resources when it comes to like the NDC partnership? Most of us sitting over here, we know about the Green Climate Fund, the Adaptation Fund, or other multilateral financing institution for climate change or bilateral. So for us and the NDC partnership, we have about 200 members, and those 200 members, 130 of them are countries, developed and developing countries. And then we have institutions and other partners. And these institution partners or the overall membership, our task at the NDC partnership is that we have to receive requests that come from countries. So when countries ask for like a seawall or whatever adaptation and mitigation plans that they want to be funded, we receive that, we vet it, and then we give it out to our members, mainly for the purpose of being financed. So the biggest thing over here is that like the period that it takes for a partner to respond, like it can really take long, because projects change over the years and then there's others along the pipeline. So we try to mitigate these by just having like our own partnership fund. So the partnership has like the partnership action fund as like our last resort to take on projects that is not taken up by the members to be funded and implemented like in the countries. The NDC partnership, it's not really an implementing agency, nor it's a legal entity by itself. It's simply mandated by 3 UN agencies, which is UNOPS, World Resource Institute, WRI. I'll come back to like the third partner. So with active country engagement strategy, we try to respond to like country requests, coordinating, analyzing, maximizing, supporting members, bridging climate and development goals together. And we really encourage a whole of government and society approach, just to ensure that we are being inclusive of the needs of everybody that is affected and the vulnerable population that are present in countries. So in a nutshell, what we are trying to achieve here is collaboration. We're trying to achieve a coalition of different countries, of different partners at a global scale. And then we're trying to bring that at a regional and national and even at community level. Most of the time, when you try to when you are in the stages of designing and planning for a project, then later on you find out that, hey, this project is similar to that are the project that is being implemented by those partners and with those donors. So in terms of trying to have like those repetition of like, resource mobilization, because I've said before, one thing that is for sure is that there is very limited resources in the climate change space, and the countries need some resources fast to implement the adaptation and the mitigation goals. So we just have to collaborate. We just have to look on the side, like if you're doing something, reach out, do a stakeholder mapping and find out like, what are they doing? Like, how can we go in and then like complement, enhance whatever they are already doing? And lastly, like I would just like give it to you, like in terms of the NDC partnership, there's so much resources that is out there in terms of the NDCs, like social media pages, and even like we have a very resourceful like website that you can just go to and then access like the services that is provided by the partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisa. And yes, a reminder of how important collaboration is and sharing that knowledge. And I think, we see the theme come back of that local and working on that local scale and making sure that we focus on that local level, but that we can't do that as individual local things. We're going to have to collaborate. We're going to have to partner. We're going to have to try and support each other in doing so. We've got lots of time left for questions, which is great. I will thank my panel for sitting 10 minutes and being very good. Would love to take questions from the floor. I'm always happy to ask questions, but it would be great to see a hand has shot up over there. There's a gentleman. Oh, hang on. Oh, hang on. Where's the microphone gone? Sorry. We'll come back to you next, sir. And then I think there was a lady as well.
Thank you, sir. Greetings to all of you. My name is Sanjay Sushil, and I come from Banwalevu. The friendly north is known in commonly. And I've been fascinated by the work of Madam Palvi. I think she's a superwoman. Whatever work she's been doing in our state is really great. Just a small story I would like to share. My niece, she was 9 years old when she represented Fiji for COP23 in Germany. And after that, that was her end of her career for that. There was nothing done for that. So I would like to raise a question. Maybe that was a funding bait, taking the young ones. But in what ways can grassroots organizations collaborate with the educational institutions to empower young voices in the development and implementation of climate change curriculum, ensuring that their perspectives and experiences shape actionable solutions for our sustainable future? Otherwise, it defeats the purpose if all the knowledgeable people we gather to build an aircraft, and at the end of the day, the aircraft does not fly. So thank you, and hope to get the positive response.
Thank you. Pallavi, would you like to?
No, I think it's, thank you for the compliment. I don't think I'm a superwoman, but thank you. I take it very graciously. I think that one role that I keep theorizing in my head is for all of us, that we have to be creative assimilators. It's a role that is just out there that we have to grab and take, because there's fantastic organizations working in the space of, say, sustainable agriculture, in the space of vernacular technologies, in the space of, having renewable energies, but there is no bridge to bring that knowledge into an education space. And that's a really creative work. How can, good architects trained in vernacular technologies or locally produced materials, how can these skills come in the classroom? There is a gap. And if we keep at it and not be like your niece, one time shine and then fizzle out, but continuously work so that when children see and feel empowered, that they are actually doing some hands-on action, that they see the change. I'm sorry to bring Gandhi again. Actually, I'm not sorry to bring Gandhi again, but I'm just saying that be the change that you want to be, that you want to see in the world. You be it. I have seen it, like if you really feel that children really feel that they're making a change, hope really springs. So that's all I can say, that there is a lot of work. You're right, there's a lot of work to be done.
Just a couple of comments. So on the youth engagement in the international process, I think that's extremely important, but it is also quite challenging to actually do, because you have to consider that if you are bringing a young person overseas, perhaps for the first time, you have to put in place a number of safeguards to make sure that nothing untowards happens to that youth or that child, and that has been a challenge for organizations in the region to support youth engagement because of the additional costs of bringing either a guardian or a parent for each and every one of the youth, so that they're taken care of, because there have been some incidents over the years that are unfortunate. Luckily, it didn't luckily it didn't involve somebody from the Pacific, but there have been incidents, and that was something that caused us to reassess exactly how much resources are we going to put into bringing young people to international meetings. But another a point on this relates to sort of climate change literacy, and one of the challenges with trying to introduce climate change in the curriculum, at least as it has been explained to me, is that the teachers are already quite overburdened with what they have to do. So to ask them to do to learn another course and to implement that is a challenge. So there was this very clever lady from Samoan lady who came up with the idea of incorporating climate change concepts into every single topic in the curriculum. So a math problem was devised to have the students figure out, if sea level rises by so much, how much bigger are the waves going to be? Incorporating it into language, social science, and so on. And I think that is, it's not the solution, but it's certainly something that would help to bring that sort of level of climate change literacy and have people more empowered from a very early age. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question I had. There's a lady here.
Can I?
Oh, sorry. No, someone just already got a microphone. Apologies.
Should I go? Okay.
Yes, go for it. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. My question relates to children also. So yeah, we talked about children education and engagement. I was wondering if you had any initiatives or ideas to share around involving children as decision makers. I think children mostly are disregarded as decision makers, seen as not legitimate or not knowledgeable enough, but they are very much impacted by decisions that are made for their present, but also for their future. So how do we make sure that they are informed and that we also understand their perspective and their experience?
Lovely questions.
Thank you. Okay, I don't want to hog the panel, so I'll just quickly share that it's my pet project. Like, I really enjoy empowered children taking decisions, and I work in the space of participatory budgeting. I don't know if you know a bit about it, but because we had 10 minutes, I can't show you a vast, which is true for all of us. Like, we only show you snippets of our work, but please look up participatory budgeting, especially in Paris, because all the cycling lanes that have come around in the last 5 years is because the mayor was so supportive of children taking decisions on how the municipal budget should be spent. And the children voted for cycling lanes as one of the projects. So yeah, it's very exciting.
I'd just like to also add on that you have actually hit a nail right on the head in the sense that in the Minecraft to Reality program, where we got year 6 students in and working on a everyday problem related to sustainability, you probably give them a couple of cases and say, look, these are the parameters A and B. And then if you were to make the decision based on the parameters of A, then this would be the consequence. If you make your decision to take the other route, and then you got the cause and effect. So because it's a simulation, students would actually learn. So they learn to make decision A. If decision A is not to their expectation or to the requirement, they would be able to step back and then go the other route. So the notion of actually gamify the engineering software, let them have a flavor, not be afraid to make mistake, and then retry the process and try other alternative, and you could actually restart the exercise, and so that they are not afraid to make mistake, they are bolder to try new things. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is for Dominic. Sorry, I must stand up. Yes, my question is related to my work profession. I mainly deal with chemistry. I love your presentation in the terms that you use binding effect, a nature-based polymer, which is chitosan. My question is your formula, you use beach sand plus coral reef bacteria and strong sandstone. My question will be on coral reefs. When you say bacteria, how do you harvest coral reef bacteria, and how is this sustainable when you created strong sandstone? In terms of chemical background, when you say you bind a particular product with a binding effect, it should stay for long. I see that you have only 2 weeks. So how is that approach sustainable in the future in terms of, as you know, Fiji is vulnerable to all 13 cyclones within November to April. And our road is one very good example. Even one last week of rain, you'll have a deep pool on the roads. Question is, the material that you're creating in terms of engineering and chemical background, have you ever correlate with a chemical or a chemist's profession in terms of binding effect that would create a material, especially on the road, that will sustain the particular area for a longer period of time? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. What geotechnical engineers have been doing to build resilient roads or infrastructure is that they pump cement into the ground. So they mix cement with water and then they pump it. It's what we call a ground improvement. So in this particular aspect of geotechnical engineering is to actually what we call to improve the ground so that it will be able to take the necessary load and to reduce the scouring or the effect of erosion. So cement, as we all know, is that it has to be fired up in a kiln up to about close to 1000 degrees Celsius. And through the mining of virgin limestones, you are actually polluting the environment by releasing a lot of CO2. So in the last 20 years or so, there has been a lot of work into this construction material called nature-based, and also to valorize byproduct from the agricultural industry or the mining industry to serve as an alternative binder or as a green cement. So when we develop binders like this, the direction is one way, which means it's permanent. And by having if you really look at the cave, for example, because this is actually, I did this about our team, went on an expedition into the limestone caves. I'm not sure if you know about Sarawak. We have 1 or 2 UNESCO sites in terms of the limestone caves. It actually has one of the biggest opening in the cave opening in the world. And the caves, they have very rich flora and fauna. And that's where we got the motivation from in order to study the bacteria. So I work interdisciplinary with other researchers like the biotechnologists, the chemists to actually look further into this. So rightfully, I do not profess that I'm the key expert only within this research, but there's a lot of multidisciplinary researchers who are actually involved. And actually what we heard yesterday is that multidisciplinary can be quite difficult to actually cultivate that kind of collegiate relationship. But I think over the years, well, somebody has to do it. And by putting, because in my past life, I was also a consultant. So I actually hit the ground very often. I go to village settlements, especially when we build hydropower dams. This is where you talk to the locals, we understand what is actually needed. So in what I'm trying to say is that, yes, the things that we are looking at to build infrastructure that is actually reliable, binders that actually go in one direction to create that permanent bond. So if you were to really look at the calcium carbonate, or sometimes we call it calcite, the only difference between these two is the chemical structure that is actually different. So why I got the motivation on using coral reef bacteria or the microbes is because is because that coral skeletons are also from calcium carbonate origin, same case as the stalactite and the stalagmite in the cave. So there's, have I been speaking too long? There's one area called biomimicry, is to look into nature and get inspiration from there and see how actually was that some more on emerging prototypes. And of course, there are ways to actually improve, but all these questions are very valid. And I'm happy to actually engage this further with you, because it's a evolving technique that we try to do away with cement. But of course, you know, it's almost impossible at this stage because cement is just everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic. Some more questions. This lady here. Oh no,
Sorry.
no, sorry. Somebody's already got the microphone at the back.
Yeah.
Well, microphone people are so efficient. They've already way ahead of me.
Yes.
Please
thank
go
you.
ahead.
My question is on regarding the young leaders, aspiring leaders, the next generation of leaders. Directed to Mr. Elisa Navar and Ms. Aspen, regarding protecting knowledge. We're talking about sustainable tomorrow and long-term climate resilience on traditional knowledge. What is your recommendations, your views on the use of traditional knowledge to enhance resilience practice in the future? Where is the line between oversharing, that our traditional sacred knowledge and skills doesn't get commercialized or exploited? How can we continue to protect these practices without exploiting this very sacred knowledge and skills? And second one is, I'm an aspiring mangrove ecologist, and I try to approach the five government ministries for interview on their views on mangrove management. I had to get approval from the permanent secretary for their government ministries. So unfortunately, some of my approach was not successful. What is your recommendation on this approach, on how can we do our long-term climate resilience if we are gatekeeping of knowledge? How can we make sure that we work together as a team and going forward without sharing this information and avoiding repeating of research or double dipping? Yeah, so it's really important because there's so much that we want to do, but we are limited with the resources that we cannot access, the data especially. Yeah? So please, the panels, whoever think can answer my question, please. I look forward to your recommendation, Vinaka.
Thank you. So there's a question there about protection of knowledge and indigenous knowledge, and on one about gatekeeping and access to knowledge. Espen, you look keen to jump in.
Yeah, because this was one of my favorite projects some years back. It was ostensibly a meteorology project. So it was done under the Pacific Meteorological Council. And it came about sort of almost accidentally, but what the project did do was to conduct a number of interviews with the traditional knowledge holders about basically weather prediction, traditional weather prediction. And there was an absolutely fascinating practices from different islands around the region. But one of the things, and this is exactly the point you were raising, this is not something that the method itself is not necessarily going to be shared. The output, the information is something that the knowledge holders might be willing to share. And that was a very, very fine balance that needed to be made, because the traditional knowledge holders weren't so keen on having this written down at all. They have an intrinsic value in their communities because of the traditional knowledge that they have and the information that they can provide to their communities by following the different sort of observations that they're making. So we had to really be very, very careful in how to sort of document this without impinging on the intellectual property rights of those traditional knowledge holders. But I think they also recognized that there is a risk that a lot of this traditional knowledge will be lost because of urban migration, because of all sorts of things happening. So there was, so I think moving forward, there is a need to work with the traditional knowledge holders to bring some new people into understanding what that traditional knowledge is about, and it certainly can be incorporated with modern science. In this particular instance, when it comes to weather prediction, we actually did some backcasting on some of the just to see if we could sort of scientifically prove, and the traditional knowledge was spot on each and every time.
Of like partnership and trying to finance projects when it comes to knowledge management, particularly traditional knowledge management. And the second part is gatekeeping of information. Yeah. So one thing that we really try and advocate for is like not to work in silos. When we get country requests, one of the things that we try and work with our focal points, mostly we work with ministries that is dealing with climate change in the countries that we work with. That projects have to incorporate the needs that is coming from the ground, and that is vetted again by the partnership. So just to respond to your question in terms of like, where do we draw the line between commercialization and traditional knowledge management? It has to be country driven. Like, again, it has to go through like consultation process. Like, it might take long, like these have been there for a long time, but something that we have to keep on like advocating and pushing for to the government, so that projects that are going at a level where it needs international funding, it takes this into account. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm just going to take chair's prerogative to just add. So this is a big issue in Australia at the moment, and the Indigenous Australians have enormous wealth of knowledge that has been exploited in the past, and there's big moves towards called ICIP, Indigenous Cultural Intellectual Property, where they're trying to use and change and make better existing intellectual property rights to better fit to traditional knowledge and how you hold that traditional knowledge. And I think with the gatekeeping, I'm afraid often the answer is perseverance. Just keep trying. And what we might do now is just take, I'm conscious of time, might take 3 questions as a bank, and then we'll answer those, and we'll see how we're doing there. I think this lady here has a microphone. We'll start there.
My question is to Dominic. I'm Sangamitra from Naka, Thailand. It's very fascinating. Actually, yesterday also I was talking to you regarding this you were saying me. So my question is continuing with her. Like, do you have any stability test for this sandstone, or like how to project it for as NBS, as a green cement or cement alternative? And second is, like, as you said that the coral bacteria you are harvesting or maybe including in your recipe, but are you considering the crustacean cells also to include? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hold on, Dominic. We'll just take another couple of questions and
Okay,
then come
sorry.
back to it. Bear with me. Another question? Oh, lady, the microphone. And then I did promise this gentleman, if we could get him the microphone, who did stick his hand up very early. No, you're done? All right, we'll find someone else. Please go ahead. Oh.
Hello, my name is Hassana Shoaibu. I'm from Nigeria. My question is for Mr. Dominic. When he spoke about the Minecraft program and the gamification, I thought it was a very great idea. But one thing I was wondering was how we can adapt those kinds of concepts to low resource settings, because what we see is that children in low resource settings are often left out of these impressive programs, and then they are an important part of the future. If we want a sustainable tomorrow, we have to include them because they are going to be part of building that tomorrow. And then what happens is if they are left out, the cycle continues, and then we have a certain group of people who, have that power. So I'm just wondering if there's a way we can adapt these, concepts. And I was wondering if, this could be a challenge for our superwoman. She works, in low resource settings. If there's a way that there could be some form of partnership or something to adapt this to these settings. Thank you.
Thank you. And one more question. There's somebody here with their hand up down the front in the blue shirt. Oh, lovely. Thank you. Oh.
My question is also to Dominic.
He's very popular.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Should have asked if everyone's got a question for anyone else.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. Talked about the sand and the use of and suggestion, and I think you did mention that you chitin shells from crustaceans. My question is the viability of those material. We don't have millions and millions of prawns, and again, from an environmental perspective, that's not going to be very viable. And also, currently there is a moratorium on the use of sand because there has been sand mining all over the place, and most of actually all of the construction industry uses sand, and we are going to be running out of sand very soon. So that doesn't seem to be a very good alternative as a resource for nature-based solution. So that's my concern.
Thank you. Well, Dominic.
Okay, probably what I'll do is I'll start with the last question first, and then I'll work backwards. So in terms of the biopolymer, yes, we actually work with industry partners who actually use crustacean shells to actually produce the biopolymer, and this is actually not part of the MICP process, but it serves as a binder. So there are three things that I talked about earlier, which is the MICP process. The second is actually the biopolymer, and the third is actually using mining waste. So this biopolymer one is with the industry because they have access to food waste, especially for crustacean shells and all this. So that's where the partnership comes about, and we always know that any addition to and understanding the chemicals would have a binding effect. So that's where we started to actually work on it. So the question on sand mining, yes, usually we use sand to actually explain the concept because it's much easier, because sand is granular and unlike a silt or clay. So of course it has also the ability to bind silt and clay, because in typical soil, you cannot choose whether you just want pure sand. You come with a mixture of sand, silt, and clays. So yes, the biopolymer would be able to actually bind different types of soil. So in terms of looking at the way forward in using this kind of materials is actually to serve as a mitigation measure, like shoreline erosion, that you could possibly have this method to actually as an option, rather than just thinking of just doing pure cement. In cement is very useful. It's really, I have to say, it's really useful. It's just very difficult to get people off cement, but we are providing alternatives here. So on the second question, Minecraft and reality, yes, again, we work in partnership with Bentley Education. So Bentley is a big multinational company based in the US. And they've actually got a lot of interoperability software that actually goes from BIM models to engineering analysis to visualization to video making and things like that. So the thing is that Bentley, why we work with them, we have got an MOU with them. We have got a Bentley studio in Griffith. We have 30 high-powered computer in the lab. And the good thing about this is that Bentley has an education arm. It's actually spearheading the education space, and that is where and why we actually got involved with them, because we know of the possibility of reaching out and to a lot of people. So I strongly believe that if you were to look at Bentley Education website, is actually all looking at inclusivity. They are all for it. If you are from schools, if you are from universities, which we actually roll this collaboration out to our students. So what happens is that each student, we have to register for an account, and then you can actually select what you want to do, and then you will be able to have the opportunity to run the analysis on a typical personal computer. It doesn't have to be a high-powered one, but you'll be able to attend the seminars, attend the training program. At the end of the day, you get a certificate out of it, and say that you are actually gone through this course, and you are, you actually learn about this. And also, if you want to be a trainer, there's also opportunity for you to be trainer. So I think this Bentley Education program, if you can check it out, I think is really far-reaching, and definitely anybody in the world would be able to apply for that. Now, on the first question there, testing, yes, definitely. We are in the space of research. We publish in journals, and you can hit me up on Google Scholar. You can see all the work that was actually published. I forgot about answering the earlier question in terms of strength and time. So yes, we could actually get this product within 2 weeks, and 2 weeks is a typical the hardening process for cement, by the way. So as civil engineer, you would test the 3-day strength, the 7-day strength, the 21-day strength, and then you try to get the value, the average value to that. So yes, we actually tested this. It's as strong as 5 MPa, and 5 MPa is like a garden paver. So in terms of, if you're an architect, in terms of what you call building regulation and all, if you've got red brick kind of a quality, you are usually quite safe because red brick is actually 5 MPa and it's actually for compartmentalization of your house in case of a fire. So in terms of testing, yes, definitely. Why coral bacteria? I think I already answered the crustacean shells one, so I'm going to leave that. But why coral bacteria is because I like to put my work out there and see what I could get inspiration from. And corals, I'm a reefer. A reefer in a way is that I have a saltwater tank at home. Okay, I learned the process. I learned. I didn't know at first that coral is actually an animal. Do you didn't believe that? And the skeleton is made of calcium carbonate, and also that all fascinates me. So currently I'm working with AIMS, Australian Institute of Marine Science, up in JCU. So we are trying to actually and actually Griffith Gene Bank as well. They've got isolated bacteria from different parts of the world, including Fiji, in tropical climate countries, including where I come from in Sarawak. We have coral reefs out there as well. So we are looking at bacteria that will be able to survive salinity. Why we want to look at salinity is because obviously you've got a lot of natural resources as in seawater. And with the chemical process, we need free calcium ions. By having free calcium ions, that's where you get the first part of your green cement, which is calcium. Calcium plus the carbonate, you get calcium carbonate. And that is the motivation behind it. It just goes down to very basic equation of getting freely available calcium. At the moment in lab, we use highly purified calcium. We use calcium chloride. If you were to look at calcium chloride, how it's actually formed is high carbon footprint, blah, blah, blah. So you know, it's not what we want, but it's a starting point because anything that's proof of concept is going to be expensive. We acknowledge that, like Tesla, you know, the time starting is so expensive, but then now you have a competitor in the market and then the price goes down. So that's the process. Everything that's actually in a prototype status is going to be expensive. I acknowledge that, but at least what I feel representing the entire research team is that we give it a shot, an honest shot at it because it has so much potential.
Thank you, Dominic, and a reminder that there is always something to learn. And you know, I think that is partly the theme here, whether it's learning to collaborate, whether it's teaching other people to think about local context, or whether it's encouraging children to learn. I will just ask the panel to sort of wrap up 1 or 2 minutes of their thoughts, their reflections, particularly around this idea of the future, what the future might look like, and how we might get there. And we might work from Espen and come this way.
Right. So climate change will require everybody to work together. Climate change is the responsibility for everyone. It requires education, it requires engineering, it requires social sciences, it requires traditional knowledge. Everybody has to be involved, everybody has to have a voice. Climate change action has to be contextualized to the local situation, and it's not an issue of do we do one thing first? No, we basically have to do everything all at once, or at least try to. It's not a chicken and egg situation because after all, isn't an egg a chicken's way to make another chicken?
Thank you.
Yeah, we just need to collaborate and partner more in terms of ensuring that, you know, the resources that is out there to implement adaptation and mitigation projects, which sometimes cost millions and billions of dollars. We need to partner up and collaborate. That's it.
Definitely, collaboration is big. By yourself, you can't do a lot, but if you work in a team, especially in a multidisciplinary team, that's where we get a lot of ideas. Throw the ideas out there. Nothing is a bad idea. Talk about it and see what's available in your backyard, and how much it's going to cost, something that's practical, and talk to a lot of industry partners. Basically, communication and a bit of marketing, and talking to the right people, and for all like-minded people, spread the love, and we can go far. Thank you.
You know, I have a favorite quote by George Bernard Shaw. It says, "You see things and ask why." So a good critical social scientists ask why. But I dream things that never were and ask why not. So I would really encourage all of us to ask the why not. Why can't children learn these things? The time is now. Why can't children learn about collaboration, dialogue, conflict resolution? Why can't these things be in school curriculum? Why do you have to wait because we are going to collapse in another 5 years? Whatever, all the data is saying, it's not at all promising. So sometimes in my head, I think we have only 5 years. Why not now? So keep on thinking of the why not. And yeah, enjoy, have fun, collaborate, eat food, eat good food. All right.
Thank you. And if you could give a round of applause to our wonderful panel. And I've just been told I've got 2 minutes. So there you go, 2 minutes extra to eat good food, collaborate. I'm sure any of the panel would love to hear further questions from you. I will hand back.
Thank you. I'll steal those 2 minutes. Yeah, thank you. So thanks again to the panel and to Ed for moderating it. A couple of announcements. So actually, I've been approached by Albert, who's a researcher at USP, who's running a study on research and innovation for climate change. And is running a survey-based research project, and is looking for anyone from the region, would like to answer the survey. So if you are from the region, if the Pacific, you call Pacific home, please connect with Albert. It's just sitting there, a few rows behind the first row, and he has surveys for you, contribute to research on these very issues. In the afternoon, now we'll break for lunch. We have an hour for lunch, for food, the basics. Let's go back to the basics. In the afternoon, we have 5 parallel sessions running. Please pick your session on the app so we can make sure there's enough seats in the rooms. We have parallel session 1 is on nature-based aquaculture. Parallel session 2 is on the research systems we want actually to be able to address the challenges we've been talking about for 3 days. Parallel session 3 is about disaster response linked to sea level rise, and it's organized by the Sasakawa Foundation. And parallel sessions 4 and 5, just go there if you want to learn more about the Reach to Reef approach, and there'll be a number of papers presented. Enjoy your lunch. We'll see you back in this room at 3:45 for the final keynote, the closing ceremony, and the award ceremony. Thank you.
Francisco, could I just jump
Yes.
in quickly? I'm sorry to stand in between your lunch, but I realized I've got one. I brought my authored book on trenchless technology, so I'd like to donate this book to one of the USP staff. So I'm happy to actually provide you this book as a reference in terms of trenchless
Round of
technology.
applause for that.